Once upon a time, in the years following those where the best way to get around town was by horse and carriage, but preceding the age of the automobile, the streetcar was all of the rage. It may be difficult to imagine nowadays, where taking the train around town often takes longer than going by car and can sometimes be a less than glowing experience. But back in the day, taking the trolley into town or to work was invaluable to the public, especially those living in the suburbs and working in the city. It was the life of just about every metropolitan area, starting in the late 1800s and carrying on through the early 20th century. Portland, Oregon was one of those cities that took a liking to the streetcar early on. In fact, their very first streetcar was established in 1872 by railroad businessman Ben Holliday. This consisted of a streetcar pulled by horses that ran along First Avenue in downtown between Gleason and Carruthers Streets, pretty much running the length of town, close to the waterfront. But the power being contributed by horses would not last forever, with the city later establishing their first steam-operated streetcars. Shortly after that, in 1889, they established their first electric streetcar line. This line ran across the original steel bridge and into the one-time town of Albina, causing a major boom to that area's popularity. This was only the beginning of streetcar lines being established around town. But with several small towns scattered around the City of Roses, it also only seemed a matter of time before car lines would be erected to carry people between Portland and the surrounding areas. These types of lines would become known as interurban car lines, meaning simply, these rails took people from town to town instead of just operating within a single town. The first of these to be constructed in the Portland area would begin work in 1890, the objective to run between Portland and Oregon City to the south. This line would not only be the first interurban line erected in Portland, or even Oregon, but the first interurban line to come into existence on the whole west coast of America. And it would also be Portland's last. Some sources have staked the claim that the Portland to Oregon City line was the first interurban line erected in America. While that would be pretty awesome, it's not historically accurate. The first interurban line in America was an 8-mile-long stretch called the Newark and Granville in Ohio, opening in 1889. But this Oregon-based line was still one of the earliest. In these early years, with car lines popping up everywhere, there were several companies that existed to create them, many that, over the years, would be consolidated down into very few. The interurban line to Oregon City would be the work of the East Side Railway Company. While the line would ultimately run 16 miles, it understandably needed to be erected in sections. And the first section, running from the downtown area into nearby Sellwood, was a bit different than how it is remembered. You see, today, most of the route that this interurban line ran down has been commemorated by an ongoing path from just south of Almsey all the way down into the town of Gladstone. And yes, I will be walking this old line. Growing up in Oak Grove and living most of my 20s and early 30s in the Jennings Lodge, Gladstone area, I walked or biked stretches of this old trolley line all the time in my younger years. And today, where the path commemorating this car line starts, it's actually not originally where the car line traveled. I'm in an area where there is a lot going on. And a lot of it railroad related. The Max line's right behind me. This is where the streetcar starts climbing up. And there's like rails going that way, rails going that way, and there's the rail museum right behind me. So it's a very trainy type area to be in, which is suits my situation just fine, because this is the general area where after the first interurban line rolled through downtown across the originally the Madison Street Bridge, actually the first version of the Madison Street Bridge, then the second, then the Hawthorne Bridge. And by the time the Hawthorne Bridge was here, it was traveling through here, much closer to the river, because the river is right over there. You can start seeing the bridges crossing and whatnot. Originally, that was not the case. The original one crossed Madison Street Bridge and just kept going that way for a little while, and then went south several blocks that way, parallel to where the line would eventually be relocated to. This original line continued along Milwaukie Avenue until Bybee Boulevard in Sellwood, where it turned west and followed Bybee as it hooked south and became 13th Avenue, running through the heart of recently incorporated Sellwood. The car line continued along 13th to the southern edge of town. While it made the line a little less accessible to those in present-day Southeast Portland, in 1904 this line would be relocated down along the Willamette River, where the trail follows today. This particular stretch is known as Springwater on the Willamette, in reference to the Springwater Corridor, another old streetcar line converted into a multi-use path. At the Sellwood-Milwaukie border, the path along the interurban line passes close to the start of the path that leads down the Springwater Corridor, making the two old lines closely connected. Through the Markham Bridge, you can see downtown right across the river, and starting in 1904, the streetcar line veered off of the bridge and came right down primarily through here. I love that this has been here a while. I swear I've seen this here numerous times. These cool old train cars. And according to maps, which a lot of old maps, they're kind of hand-drawn, or, you know, they're not absolutely perfect, but according to those maps, the streetcar line would have come more or less through here, which, as you can see, there's still railroad tracks coming through today. Some continue on going directly south, some veer off and go under the viaduct over here and kind of travel along Division Street for a while. And actually, the way early maps show it, after coming down, wrapping through here, the streetcar line ran really close proximity, almost right on top of what would be Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard becoming McLaughlin Boulevard, Highway 99. So it would have been running really close to the viaduct right there. So it was probably running, you know, probably in this area, maybe not right here, but maybe a little further on over where there's tracks, a little further over there. And it just wrapped around through here. So you keep following general area where these rails are going south. You've got Water Avenue right here, Tillicum Crossing over the ridge, bridges downtown, so on and so forth, gradually fading away to the north. And there's this one stretch of rail that continues on south here, and this is pretty close to in line with where the streetcar line ran. And we know that because right ahead here is where the trail begins. Yeah, so the 1904 alteration of the car line, moving it closer to the river, rolled right through here, and the trail starts right there. And I don't know the exact reason why they changed it when they did, but there's a pretty good possibility as to why they moved the line over here. Because, I mean, honestly, you're further away from, there's less people that were living down here. So in terms of getting more people on the streetcar line, it wasn't really helping them out that much. But something was happening right around this time, a ways ahead, that happened to correlate with this interurban car line, namely the company that owned the car line and had it moved from there over to here was also involved in another business venture involving something that to this day exists right along the trail here, and I will get to that. And there's the viaduct that I said, old maps show pretty much the streetcar line ran really close to, right up against it. And here's where we know for a fact it actually started. And it says Springwater Corridor. I know it also goes under the name Springwater on the Willamette, which sounds like the newest, most ritziest housing development. But it's not. It's just a path. And now we are officially on the route that the old streetcar line went down. And I love, it's run down, but we've got some really cool old run down mucky industrial architecture here to lead us under the Ross Island Bridge and continue on south. All the way into the heart of Sellwood, the new portion of the line stayed in close proximity to the Willamette, running parallel to the Willamette shoreline that ran along the river to its west side. This line started as a trolley line and was later converted to an interurban line, notoriously remembered for rolling along a shaky trestle over the edge of the river. Such an unstable route, a tunnel was cut through Elk Rock to replace this trestle. Back in 2016, I managed to visit both sides of the tunnel, both ends somewhat secluded. And unlike the line to Oregon City, we still have the rails going through here, as it was purchased in the late 1980s with the objective of preserving it. Highway 99 runs up there, and if you, didn't venture in this area often, you might not even realize that this is down here between that and the river. And through the brush, we're beginning to make out the northern edge of Oaks Park. Now, Oaks Park just happened to open in 1905, and this relocated here from up over there the year before. Isn't that convenient timing? Come May 30th, 1905, coinciding with Portland's Lewis and Clark Exposition, which opened only 2 days earlier, the iconic Oaks Park opened for business. But this was hardly a coincidence, because it was actually very common for amusement parks to be erected in the vicinity of streetcar lines. One example was the Council Crest amusement park up in the hills south of downtown, which the Council Crest Street line led directly up to. And Oaks Park was itself erected by the Oregon Water, Power, and Railway Company. And after the East Side Railway Company was sold off in foreclosure just a few years earlier, in 1902, this interurban line was taken over by the same Oregon Water and Railway Company. So is it a surprise this line and Oaks Park just ended up side by side? No way. It was a major benefit to the ridership on the line, as the best way to get to Oaks Park in those early years was by this interurban line. So you had yourself a streetcar line, and actually there's the Oaks Park, they had a train that runs through. I don't know if it still does. That would go along these tracks. I love that we have tracks running parallel to the path, and for all we know, the interurban line may have run more in line with where these tracks are than exactly right here. We're talking a matter of feet, but how convenient to spend a bunch of money relocating a streetcar line to a place where actually less people have access to it, because you're not having to go right through the middle of town. You're having to go through here where nobody lives. But you just happen to be presenting people who, at the time when this opened, 1905, cars aren't a thing yet. Streetcars are all the rage. People are using them to go everywhere. So you alter your streetcar line to bring people right to the entrance of the park that you also had built. Well, yeah, you get off the streetcar, gather, dressed in your Sunday best, walk through here, not have to worry about a car hitting you, and you could just walk. I don't know if the main entrance was right here, but it's been here since I've been alive. And then you could just walk up and head into the park. And if you're ever down around here and Oaks Park's too crowded, you can walk right through here, keep going. Eventually you hit some trails, keep going the one that goes this way. Great trail cutting through the Oaks Bottom Wildlife Refuge that lines a good portion of the old, newer path, but path of the old streetcar. And of course, the streetcar just continued on south here, further and further into Sellwood. How's the chow, fellas? Oh, that great, huh? Sorry. They relocate like 10 feet. There's the Sellwood Bridge, or the most recent version of it. The original was built in 1925, so imagine you'd be rolling down this Riverside streetcar and you got a front row seat to them building the original bridge, which actually was going to come through right here. It was going to come off this ridge and cross here about 2 blocks north of where the bridge ended up, which is so interesting because the street would have come down up there. It's like this little tiny residential street, whereas Tacoma, where it crosses over, it already was a pretty well-established street. But yeah, coming down this car line close to the river, and with it being operational for decades, you would have experienced a lot of interesting little pieces of history. Between Oaks Park and Tacoma Street, which crosses the Sellwood Bridge, the 1904 line began to turn to the southeast and slowly drift away from the river, ultimately curving into 13th Avenue on the southern edge of Sellwood, intersecting with where the 1892 to 1904 line passed through. Thus, from this point south, the streetcar followed the same route for some 50 years. One key change would happen not far from here, but we'll get to that. This general area near where 13th crosses today's railroad tracks, near the Portland-Milwaukie border, has so much historic significance in terms of the old interurban line that once passed through here. And of course, the rain just now decided to show up 5 hours early because it's Portland. But this whole area in front of us is a place of pretty strong significance in relation to streetcars, in particular this interurban line. This brick building
right over here, this was called the clubhouse, essentially. It was a place for the, people that were working on the line to, if they had a break, they could hang out here. I mean, it was kind of a hangout spot as much as anything else for these guys that worked here. And part of the reason that they would put something like that here is right across the way and a little further down here is where a car barn was once located, where they, parked the streetcars, serviced them if necessary. So they had that right over here, and then the clubhouse was this building right here. So it's, it's a building of really great historical significance, and it's still here, still being used. Thank God. And yeah, you can see old pictures. The car barn was just a little ways beyond it. So with the clubhouse here and the car barn right over here, the streetcar line managed to turn and hook this way, and the trail stays with it as, best it can, but there's still, again, railroad lines going through here that continue way off that way. And this is where things get interesting. I love this. When I first read this, I was like, no, that can't be right. Because when you think about it now, it just seems so goofy, but it actually, I guess kind of makes sense when you think about the fact that, again, the route that came through here was the later route. There was another route before then. And as I mentioned earlier, it veered eventually off of Milwaukie onto Bybee, and then Bybee curved and turned into 13th. So the streetcar used to come straight down 13th, which is right up here. There's actually this little piece of railing that goes off here and just ends, and you can see there's some old cars here. There's a lot to take in right here. First, you've got some old cars. Been here for a while. And again, the streetcar line, the 1904 altered version, would have wrapped around through here and hit 13th Avenue, which is right here. So this is where the newer version of the line connected with the original part, because yeah, the original line up till 1904 came right down here, and the newer one comes around through here, and so they both start going off this way together. You see a little sign over here. It says Golf Junction Park. I guess this is kind of a tiny park. Golf Junction, that was the name of the stop, the streetcar stop that was right here. Which is something I haven't really talked a whole lot about yet, because I want to get into it eventually, but this is where the Golf Junction stop was to pick people up. And there is, I'm wondering if it's buried. I know there's an original stretch from the old streetcar line, and it's pictures I saw of it. It's outside this fence, so this isn't it. I had to pause and look up a picture. And yeah, the railing, because yeah, again, it was coming off the 13th, so it comes right through here. I wonder if is it just buried now? Because that's kind of a bummer. I was hoping to see that. Because yeah, you can see in the picture that it lines up with this opening here. I knew it wasn't here. I just wanted to make certain. And the ground's a little bit lower here, but is it? Nope. Here we go. This is something better than nothing. There we go. It's getting reclaimed by nature, though. There's some streetcar, original streetcar metal for you. God, they're making like no effort to keep this. I was like, it's gotta still be here. This is gonna be such a bummer if it isn't. There it is. I'm touching it with my own 2 fingers. Yeah. Piece of rail. And it, yeah, see, it just, and maybe it's probably more exposed when it's not, autumn just happened and there's leaves everywhere, but It's down there if you look hard enough. I don't know if it's still here, but we got a little bit of it there for you. And a little bit is better than nothing. Ugh. So yeah, actually, yeah, and it makes sense. Streetcar line. I mean, this lines up perfectly with having come right down the middle of 13th. So that line wrapped around, joined here, and kept going that way. Which is what makes, I mentioned like something interesting happened. And I'm about to get to that, but I want to show you one more thing about, before I get to the oddity of the streetcar line going specifically that way. But I can't leave without paying a visit to, I don't know, we call the big building in downtown Big Pink. It's just Big Mint, I guess. Mint green. My God, it makes me want, I want some mint chocolate chip ice cream now. But this is a substation built by the Oregon OWP and RY, and then the RY. So Oregon Water, Power, and Railway Company. The company that for a while owned the streetcar line. And so isn't it coincidence that they have a substation literally right along where, I mean, granted by this point this part was closed, but still the line was right there. This substation here was actually used to help provide power to the streetcar coming through here, which makes sense. I mean, it's the same company that built this was the company that maintained the streetcar line. But I had to step over here and pay a visit. So yeah, just over the course of like a couple of blocks, you have a lot of streetcar history. From the clubhouse, the site of the old car barn, substation, some old trains, but I mean, most importantly, you have a little bit of old railing left over. And now for this interesting little funky thing. Right here, these three roads come together, and Exeter Drive continues off this way. And this is gonna get me about as close as I can get. Can't get perfectly in line with where the old streetcar was because, I mean, it's gone. And I try to get as close to in line as possible. Obviously, I can't get right where the streetcar continued, but where this drive ends is pretty close to where the streetcar line continued on. Because the streetcar line would be a little ways over here, but still going south. And this street kind of it meanders this way before turning off that way. So this is really close up ahead here with where the streetcar line was. But unlike this road over here, the streetcar line did not take a sudden turn to the left. It kept on going. And if you look dead ahead, you see there's a golf course here. This is the Waverly Country Club. And this was established back in the 1890s. So come 1904, or actually, 1893, because I forget, we're now on the original line. It opened a couple years after the streetcar line was originally built. And so, by that logic, I think it was 1896 when this first started. So the streetcar line was probably just like right over here, give or take feet. And the streetcar line just went through here. So it cut right through the middle of this golf course, which stands to reason they just built the country club around the streetcar. Which, I mean, I guess it makes sense. Your bougie country club types. I am sinking so far into this. Your swanky country club types throw your wrenches into your bag, hop on the bougie streetcar line, come down through here, and I guess hop off and you're right here where you need to be. I mean, I guess it's practical for people that would want to come here, but it just sounds so goofy when you think nowadays there was just a streetcar line. It's right here. But it wouldn't stay that way forever.
From the initial section built between Portland and Selwood, the line was continued on into the heart of Milwaukie. The line as a whole would be completed in 1893, with the very first car departing downtown Portland at 2 p.m. on February 16th of that year. It reportedly reached the end of the line in Oregon City at 2:30. It was another exciting moment in the early history of public transportation, but it would be less than 10 months into the existence of this line when tragedy struck, the first major headline-grabbing incident related to that line. On the morning of November 1st, 1893, through a thick fog and frozen temperatures, leaving frost on the ground, a streetcar called the Inez rolled out of Oak Grove, headed into Portland. This would mean crossing the fairly new 1891 Madison Street Bridge. With an approaching boat, the swing to open this bridge was activated, meaning the streetcar needed to stop. A potential combination of moving too fast, not seeing the gate to the bridge being closed in the fog, and the frost on the tracks affecting its stopping power, the Inez went over the edge and into the cold Willamette waters, killing several passengers. To this day, it is still the worst streetcar and bridge disaster in the history of Portland. It also inspired several changes in streetcar regulations, which included having boxes of sand aboard cars to spill onto frosty railways during the cold season to help with stopping those cars. By the end of the 1890s, the Madison Street Bridge was worn out and unsafe, in desperate need of a replacement. The second bridge, sharing the same name, opened in the spring of 1900. And by the end of that decade, this bridge was also worn out and would be closed down in January 1909. It would be almost 2 years, December 1910, before a new bridge called the Hawthorne Bridge was completed and opened for traffic. This created conflict with the Interurban line, and many clamored for the Madison Street Bridge to stay open to allow for consistent streetcar traffic while the Hawthorne Bridge was being constructed. Along with the common occurrence of amusement parks appearing along street lines, another intentional commonality with streetcar lines was the objective of sparking new neighborhoods along with them, especially the further from the center of Portland one went. The original line ran down 13th Avenue through the main drag of Selwood, and beyond there the line rolled down past the Willamette River again, along the edge of downtown Milwaukie. Miles down the line, it would turn down Portland Avenue and roll through the middle of the town of Gladstone, only recently established in 1889. Its downtown area would develop right along this line before it crossed the Clackamas River into Oregon City, making its way down Main Street into the heart of that town. Like Gladstone, a still to this day unincorporated community between there and Milwaukie, Oak Grove, also developed its main drag around the Interurban line. And located right across the railroad lines from the Gulf Junction site is a small and charming area originally known as Garthwick's Addition. While some homes predate this, in the mid-1910s this tract was converted into the development that exists today. I'm certain the fact that the interurban car line passed right through there had not slipped their mind. While the origins of Milwaukie, just south of Selwood, date back to the 1840s, it was still a sparsely populated area with less than 500 known residents as of 1890 when construction began on the interurban line. Lots of farmland and orchards, the original site of the Bing Cherry, but still a shadow of a town. While always a small town, Milwaukee's population steadily increased in the coming decades, and the downtown grew there by the river after the streetcar's arrival.
So we're a little ways east of where we were before. Golf course is pretty much right behind us. by the 1950s, they moved the streetcar line over here. I don't know exactly when it happened, but eventually the streetcar line just started coming down where you can see the rail crossing here. That's where they had it come out. So they had it wrap around this neighborhood, avoiding the country club altogether, and it just came out where this line comes through now. And yeah, and then 13th, where it used to cross, is just a few blocks down there. And it just turned and wrapped right along here, and you can see there's where the trail continues. And then if you go that way a short distance, there's a little path that hooks off, and that's where the Springwater corridor starts, the main Springwater corridor that travels many, many miles that way. So this is kind of the place where they all come together. I guess this was another benefit of having the streetcar line here. If you needed to come and visit a loved one, you could just get off. Well, I don't know if there was a stop really close to here. I'm just trying to wait out the rain a little bit, and there's never anybody here. I love this place. Might as well, at least while I'm waiting for the rain to slow, can visit actually a few familiar faces. Mamie Walsh, I did a big video on her a while back. She died a year before streetcar line opened, so not to correlate death with streetcars. I mean, they have caused some, but yeah, right when she was getting buried, there was construction going on just a little ways up there, because they finished it through to Selwood first. But yeah, you've got quite a few famous Milwaukie names, and a lot of them, you know, if they lived long enough, probably took the streetcar. The streetcar was very important for the people of Milwaukie. Here you got members of the Llewellyn family, very prominent. You've got a reference to Hector Campbell, who I don't know much about him, but I know there's a school in Milwaukie named after him, which is interesting. We've got another Hector Campbell here, and more Llewellyn, reference to Seth Llewellyn. This is a very prominent early Milwaukie resident, passed away 1896. Really glad to see there's been some summer cleaning, because not to stray too far from the focal subject, just waiting out the rain, but it's believed Mamie Walsh was killed by a guy named Nathan Harvey. And this is the grave of Nathan Harvey's mother and his brother, and I believe, yeah, his other brother. So his mom and his two brothers are buried right here. And it's thought he may have played a role in all of their deaths, but again, I don't want to stray too far from the focus of this video. But then, just beyond this little fence, you've got the Waverly Golf Course, and yeah, a streetcar would have just gone right through here. And then, instead of being along 17th here as it later would be, it just kind of eventually made its way over that way. And on that note, it looks like the rain is finally letting up. And as maps and diagrams go, while the streetcar ultimately was moved over here where it could roll right along 17th Avenue until it hit Highway 99 or McLaughlin Boulevard right up here, the version that used to cut through the, hello loud truck, the version that cut through the country club, it didn't just like turn after you pass the country club. It is suggested that it just kind of stayed over here and kind of slowly meandered a little closer to the river and just kind of gradually made its way over to 17th right around the time that it hits McLaughlin. So once you get to the end of 17th and McLaughlin here, you have once again a newer version connecting with where the old version would have come out.
Near where this car line turns off of 17th Avenue and follows in close proximity to where McLaughlin Boulevard, or Highway 99, is today, it would have passed by a car barn that stood on Jackson Street between McLaughlin and Main Street. Barns like this one, and the one that existed once in Sellwood, served as locations to both store cars as well as conducting maintenance on them. While pretty much all car barn buildings are gone now, there is actually still one in existence along 28th and Burnside in Portland. Upon the start of the 20th century, interurban lines had extended well outside of the Portland area to places like McMinnville, Corvallis, and Eugene. With each year, there was increased ridership on these car lines, and Portland had one of the most sophisticated streetcar systems in the country. In the case of the line between Portland and Oregon City, the power over it changed again in 1906 when Portland Railway Light and Power took control over all of the area's streetcar lines. And by the 1920s, this company would become Portland Electric Power, or PEPCO, which oversaw both Portland General Electric and the Portland Traction Company, the last company to have control over this particular car line. Ridership would peak in the year 1922, which is not to say there was a drastic drop immediately after that, but the numbers would never reach those heights again.
And we are venturing into the downtown Milwaukie area, which was pretty prominent. You know, definitely they were helped by the establishment of this streetcar line coming right through essentially the waterfront of town, because the river's right over here. And then you've got, the downtown area, which was also kind of, where the town really developed in the first place way back in the day. And they love the streetcar. They benefited from the streetcar. And there's a few things along the main drag here that tie back to that early history. First, I want to mention, I mentioned back up in Sellwood how they once had car barns there. Well, prior, as I understand it, because I read in some information how they were fighting moving car barns to Sellwood, which implies they weren't there, but they were here because Milwaukie had car barns. People in the city were fighting to keep the car barns here and not move to Sellwood, which makes me think those Sellwood car barns came later than the Milwaukie ones. Anyway, crossing McLaughlin at 17th, where 17th ends, you come to this, it's just a parking lot nowadays, but they have like, the weekend market? What is it, Saturday market? I don't remember. Where people, bring their wares and sell them. Well, towards this end of this block, this is Jackson and McLaughlin, this is where the Milwaukie car barn was located once upon a time. So, makes sense. The streetcars, right over there. You don't make them travel too far. The barns are right here. So any storage, maintenance, what have you, they could do right there. But that's not the only thing of prominence. In the vicinity of the downtown area, down near the waterfront, this is where I get to talking a little bit more specifically about the various stops that the streetcar would have. And so again, the streetcar would have been running right over here, between McLaughlin and the river. And this up here, this is Monroe Street. And I'm approximating slightly, but southwest corner right over there of this intersection, right about over here, is where the Milwaukie station was located, where people got on and off the streetcar. That was right here. There used to be an old hotel. It couldn't have been here too long because there was a hotel building that was more well known in this area as Vic's Tavern, but the hotel was built, I think, in 1912. So the station couldn't have been here any later than like 1911, 1912. So less than 20 years from when the streetcar line originally opened. So, I mean, I can only assume they just put it in a new spot, but right in front of us here, this is where the original Milwaukie station was. And as we progress, I've just left the downtown Milwaukie area, so walking just south of downtown. And, you know, I've talked a bit about how, you know, certain areas can't know for absolute certain where the streetcar line was. Maybe the tracks were like here, maybe they were like over there, you know? So sometimes you have to like assume somebody else got it right or approximate on your own. But then there's instances where you know exactly where the streetcar line went because you actually have like a location where it only could have gone through one little area. And now you see this old railroad bridge crossing McLaughlin, the Max tracks behind it, but this, I mean, you just see by the wood, very old bridge. Definitely was around here when the streetcar was. And then you notice, out of convenience, obviously we're on a path, it opens up here and you can walk right through it. This fella's gonna jolt through it on his bicycle, but this has been like this for a very long time. They didn't just do it for the trolley trail. It was like this because this is specifically where the streetcar line went through. That's why it's open like this. You can, I'm pretty sure I found a picture of the actual like streetcar lines coming through here. So obviously a lot of this is new, but this has always been open like this. So no matter what, we know the streetcar went through right here. And then it continued right on up through here. The Max, I grew up here and I'm so used to this being open. I'm still not adjusted to the fact that these Max tracks are here nowadays. But right over here in the vicinity of 22nd and Bluebird, just off of McLaughlin, is where the next streetcar stop from the Milwaukie station was located. And they approximated the site of the actual stop. A lot of them just have these little kind of wood shelters you could sit in. You could fit maybe 3 or 4 people in them. They were pretty small. I mean, you could probably fit more if you really had to. But it was located right up here. You can see there's this building here, and then the little yellow one past it. Right about where that yellow one is. That's where the Island Station stop was. And this whole neighborhood off over here, between here and the river, is known as the Island Station neighborhood. So that made sense. So yeah, so like right here in this general spot, this is where the Island Station stop was located. And logic suggests that the streetcar line probably stayed in close proximity to the highway, so it probably went through here, but obviously the Max is here now, so the trail has to wrap around it. And a train-like reference possibly to the TriMet here and the streetcar line that once was. There's this little piece of the tree was uprooted, but it turned out it was just train tracks and a support all along. It's cool, you know, it's there. It is what it is. But as we process forth, there was the next station that seems to be the one. A lot of these stations people know within, like, you know, 20, 30 feet exactly where they were. But the next one, it's approximated is somewhere between the Island Station stop here and Park Avenue right up here. And there wasn't a Park Avenue stop, so it may have been in much closer proximity to Park Avenue. And interestingly enough, because Park Avenue is kind of a transitional location, because for a long time, the old trolley trail that I grew up walking, the Oak Grove one, it came out at Park Avenue, and that's where it ended. For a long time, this was just, you know, the Max wasn't here. There was a couple of like restaurants located here. I think one of them was called like Da Vinci's or something like that. But yeah, so we used to end up there. And over time, they've managed to do their best to connect it. Because I've been, you know, I started on the Springwater on the Willamette, and I've been, you know, 95% of the time I've been on a trail like this. There's just a few times where you have to segue to sidewalks because it's just the way it is. They're giving you lots to look at on your way up here.
With streetcar ridership stagnating, seriously affected by the massive increase in car ownership, things were only destined to get worse in the aftermath of the stock market crash of 1929 and the subsequent Great Depression. This is where the real decline first started, which is not to say many people weren't still reliant on the streetcar. Some lines ceased operations, and there was obviously financial issues with trying to keep the system running as well as possible. Despite these struggles, one transition that took off during the 1930s were trolley buses, which, well, look exactly like they're named. Also nicknamed as trackless trolleys, they moved on wheels like a regular bus but got their power from wires above, like a trolley line. Equally, regular buses were increasing in frequency, gradually taking riders away from these car lines. Also, during this time, the Portland Traction Company would take over running the area's interurban lines and would be tied to them until the very end. But still, bus lines were hardly as numerous as they are today in the Portland area. Many areas in particular outside of Portland, where lots of citizens needed to get into town, still relied heavily on the streetcar. One of these areas was in between the towns of Milwaukie and Oregon City, namely Oak Grove. Even today, there is minimal bus traffic through here, so one can imagine what it was like many decades ago.
This is where the orange line starts. It's actually my second day being out here. I'm putting 2 full days of walking into this. You didn't think I was gonna walk from OMSI to pretty much Oregon City in one day, did ya? And from the location where the Max line begins, which is right by Park Avenue, right here where it comes into McLaughlin right behind me. And here at what is Park, crossing street is 27th, you see the present day trail coming out like this, and then it's actually going to continue right over there. And the funny thing is, before they, you know, redid everything, paved it, made the path stretch all the way, you know, at least to the Springwater corridor, right over here is where the trail ended back in the day before they fixed it up. And you could barely...
Wait.
I'm waiting.
To cross Southeast
And you could barely see the entry point right over here. In old pictures, the entry right here is like this little dirty, dusty, it looks like just a little pathway to random, like it might even be going up to somebody's house, like it's maybe a couple feet wide that you just kind of slipped up between this house and what used to be over here. And obviously, now it's far more open. For the most part, between here and where Gladstone begins, the main focus is showing where the various stations were located. And a lot of these stations, I mean, for the most part, they're named after the streets they intersect with. In fact, there was one right up here where these poles are. But historically, it is said that these paths, or these stops, the names of them correlated to the nature of the area or people that previously owned the land. Like it usually correlated to more than just a street name. So again, most of these stops, or former stops, are related to the crossing street, but there are some that had names that didn't. And in fact, behind me, a little ways down from the orange line, that one was called, I think, Lakewood. As far as I know, there wasn't a Park Avenue stop, but here's where Evergreen Street comes in. And there was an Evergreen stop right here. Not only was there a stop right here, there was like a little store right behind it. And so you'll see a lot of this, a lot of these streets, mostly coming from River Road a few blocks over. And then they just kind of end right here because there's lots of residences and commercial buildings between here and McLaughlin. But this is where the Evergreen stop was located. And it could just be that the streets that intersect were also named after the same thing, because all of them, just in case I missed a station. But as far as Evergreen Street's right there, Evergreen stop, it says it was named for the surroundings, which was probably evergreen greenery. And the next one we're coming to, again, a station where the street there is named after the station, but it also was given a name for a specific other purpose. We are not that far down. This is where Silver Springs Road comes in, and there was a Silver Springs station right here. That was specifically named after a spring, an actual spring that was located in the area. And this is where that station, I don't know exactly where the spring was, I assume it's long gone, but there's where Silver Spring, another little road goes up to River Road, and this is where that stop would have been located. And some of these stops were actually named after the family who previously owned Cock-a-doodle-doo, the land that families that previously owned the land that it's on. Because this is where Torbank Road comes in, and this was the Torbank stop, and it was named after family of that name that previously owned this land. And again, this is just another short distance road because there's residences on the other side, so a few of these roads just don't pass all the way through. But they gave you a map so you know which way you're going. Which, speaking of which way you're going, just as a reminder, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you locals or people that have walked this stretch know I am walking north to south, so we are going in a southern direction heading towards Oregon City. And while those are, you could say, kind of some back road stops, places that, you know, I almost said tree line. Hey, tree line. The train line, you know, just kind of going between all these residential homes. But the next stop up ahead is at Courtney Avenue. And this was one of the more larger crossings. And Courtney is still kind of a significant road passing through here. It's not a highway or anything, but it was originally known as North Avenue. So I want to say for a time this was maybe called the North Stop, but then eventually became Courtenay Station. And here right ahead is Courtenay Avenue. According to this trolley sign, Oak Grove is 0.4 miles ahead, but I actually think technically we're either in Oak Grove or entering. Jesus, I lived here for how many years? I still don't perfectly know the border. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, especially once you go, I mean, literally, I just passed Oak Grove Elementary, the newer one. I went to the old one that used to be up here, but I don't know. Maybe Oak Grove Elementary is technically outside of Oak Grove. But anyway, whatever, that's not important. What's important is, here's Courtenay Avenue. This is where the Courtenay Station was. And as I understand it, when the name was changed, it was changed to Courtenay. It was done so after a man bearing that name who was a local Irish. Hey, they built something there. That was always like this empty, like swampy yard where this kind of brown and gray apartment thing is now. Anyway, so apparently the Courtenay name comes from a local Irish chicken farmer that lived here. So who would have thought? Irish chicken farmer and Interurban Streetcar history combined references. And this here is where Arista Drive starts. And Arista Drive is very important in relation to this whole thing. As you can tell, I mean, we've been on the path for a while. So the streetcar just came right down Arista Drive here. So I don't know personally, but for all I know, there's maybe streetcar tracks buried under there. I don't know if they tore them out or what exactly happened. But the streetcar line used to go right down the middle of this street. And so some of the best old pictures you have of the Oak Grove area, it's of the streetcar going through here. Dead ahead here is Pine Lane. And for the record, at least according to the signs, it's not Pine Lane, it's Pine Lane, one word. And this is actually an interesting piece of history that I didn't know about until I started researching this. But in the vicinity of where Pine Lane meets Arista here, there was another stop, and it was called the St. Teresa stop. And it was named after a sanitarium that was actually located here. And they say that the stop was on the east side of the street, so it would have been somewhere right up here. They said there's a big hedge right in this area that denotes where the sanitarium is, or was. I don't think it's still here. It's all residential now, but I don't see any particularly big hedges. So my guess is that they're gone. But yeah, I guess there's some hedges. But yeah, Pine Lane right here is where the St. Teresa stop was located. And then as you continue on, the next stop dead ahead is where Oak Grove Station was located. And that was one of the most prominent stops on the line. And the epicenter of what you may call historic downtown Oak Grove, which I grew up literally 1 block away from. So I walked through there all the time in my younger years. No way, the house on the corner is for rent. This is kind of, if you're a local, this is kind of one of the prominent historic homes. I remember looking at it a lot from the field right over here, because where my elementary school was, and being fascinated. Apparently it's for rent, or I don't know, maybe some of the space is for rent. I don't know. It looks pretty empty. I wish I had the money. But yeah, right up here, the next stop up here is where Oak Grove Boulevard crosses. I think it was called Center before then, which I guess makes sense. And right over here, the building that's there now, which actually looks I mean, there are some similarities to my old elementary school, but that's where my old elementary school was located. And played sports and whatnot. And all these years growing up, I mean, I never knew that there was a streetcar right here. And the original elementary school that predated the 1924 one that I went to, that was built early 1900s. I don't remember the exact date, but it was located kind of on this same land. I think it was a little further to that end. So the elementary school would have been pretty close to the car line. And I lived like one street over, Lee Avenue, right down, like 3 places. And this is the main drag of historic downtown Oak Grove. This is the area that was able to come to life, and the streetcar line was very prominent to that. You go down there, it's mostly residential. You go down this way, once you get to Rupert, the next street down, it's, you know, mostly residential. There's not a whole lot of commercialism in this area, and pretty much all of it is focused right here. And this is actually a historic building. It's just been covered up because this building and this building were built at the same time, and I think were even owned by the same people. So these were businesses. And you can see this is a cool old building. I saw some people messing with this, like positive, not like breaking in and messing with it. And oh, we got some old signage here. 25 cents for something? I don't know. But yeah, this would have been a commercial building right along this streetcar line. I'm sure it shows up in some pictures. And there's old signage, Oak Grove Shoe Emporium. Yeah, businesses just went down a little bit. And there was a pharmacy like right here on the corner. In fact, there's a really cool mural here that was put on here a while back. Got antique store, gun shop. Gotta have one of those. But yeah, so the pharmacy was located, as I remember it, right here as well. And yeah, there was all of these little, oh my God, is Buy Right Grocery? Is Buy Right Grocery gone? It can't be. Oh my God, I'm getting old. The store I used to get all my candy from and soda as a kid. Historic Oak Grove, established 1890. So yeah, established just a couple years before the streetcar line. Pretty sparse. This is where the Oak Grove Station was located. And the building that it was in, destroyed by a fire in 1914. Oak Grove did not have, they didn't really have their own fire department. It was, I guess, something they didn't really take that seriously. And so it got, when something caught fire, sometimes it just didn't, get taken care of properly. Yeah, the streetcar line would come through and would stop right here.
As mentioned before, I lived many years between Oak Grove and Gladstone, spending more than 15 years living 1 block over from Arista Drive and what is regarded as the central hub of Oak Grove once upon a time, at Arista and Oak Grove Boulevard. I rode up and down the old trolley trail on my bike, and in later years, without a car or a bike, I used it as a calm, backdoor way to get to various places in and around Highway 99. And people out here really needed that line, especially in its early years. Back then, if people down here wanted to get up into the city, they had to go by horse and buggy, or sometimes by paddling their way up the river. The Interurban line made travel substantially easier, and at this time, the bulk of Oak Grove's population, which was small as it was a new settlement, was near this line. There were few other places in the Portland area that both needed and longed for their streetcar line more than my old hometown of Oak Grove. The main Oak Grove station was originally called Creighton Station, as there was already an Oak Grove in Oregon, but by 1907 they changed that name. The building it was located in was destroyed by a fire on October 8, 1914. This forced the station to briefly relocate across Arista Drive. Something small, but it was a bit of an adjustment for commuters.
View looking north up Arista towards the intersection, crossing intersection of Oak Grove Boulevard, and the station to the left side. And from the commercial center of Oak Grove, love you, miss you, but I got work to do. The streetcar continued down Arista here for another couple blocks. And now we're getting to something that always confused me as a kid. Like, I knew generally that this was the old trolley trail, but I never really thought about it. So there were things I was confused about as a kid but never looked into. And one was why Arista Drive is here and it ends right down there. But as we see the trolley trail resume, we know that the trolley veered off of present day, this portion of Arista going that way, and it started going this way. And there's even a little map to show us where we're at. You got Park where I started, Courtney, Oak Grove Boulevard. I know here, so you see we're veering off. But then what's interesting is as the trolley trail continues, dead ahead here, Arista Drive resumes. So as a kid, I was always like, how is this Arista Drive? And then how is this also Arista Drive over here? The answer is the old streetcar line. At least I assume that's the answer. This was a portion of the trail that it was not very, like, I didn't even know you could get through here as a kid. I just thought it ended right up here where Rupert Drive is. So yeah, here's where Arista Drive not only begins again, but it splits in two. You've got Arista over there, and you've got Arista over there. And what's interesting is you'd think the road splits in two, that each way would be one way, but no, these are both two-way. So you can go north-south on this side, you can go north-south on this side. I don't know. And then Rupert Drive, I don't know if you can see the sign, but anyway, this is Rupert Drive coming in because it runs parallel to Arista, and it just kind of wraps around and becomes Arista. And this is one of the prime spots that until they fix this all up, especially right here, you could still see the old rails. In fact, I remember people would get pissed. I remember I did when I first got my license, because you see this has to angle up. It's kind of a, angling upward, and the rails would be here, and you'd hit the rail with your tire and your car would kind of go boom like that. So it's kind of a bummer that the tracks aren't here anymore, but I guess it was kind of a hassle. And I mean, you built the street up and keep the track. I don't know. It feels like something that even if they tried to do it, it wouldn't have been that well maintained. Oh, and by the way, this is where the approximate site of the Rupert stop. So this would have been the next stop down from Oak Grove Station. And dead ahead here, this is Swain Avenue crossing. And as far as the recent information I found, there wasn't a Swain Avenue stop. But I did a video back in 2016 where I did this exact same thing, but I was just like walking just the Oak Grove stretch and showing where the stations were. So I'm gonna check and see, because for some reason in the back of my mind, I'm thinking there was a Swain station, wasn't there? But I could be out of my mind. And if there is, well, I'll be showing it right here, and you'll know whether I'm right or whether I'm just donkey-brained. The next one that, at least in this time and place, I know for certain had a stop. That's right, and I forget these are here too. I gotta stop and acknowledge. Oh, so this actually is marking where the approximate location. I didn't even know this was here. I knew that there was like a marker or two. I didn't realize that there was full-on markers showing exactly where the station was. The approximate location. This is actually helpful because I would have thought Risley Station was down there because that's where Risley Avenue is. But apparently, I am donkey-brained because that marker is showing where this, I guess this is which is weird. Wait, maybe that's where my confusion is. It all makes sense. The stars are aligning. The Risley stop was at Swain, which makes no damn sense. But hey, the Risley family was prominent in this area, and just because it wasn't on Risley Avenue, I guess doesn't mean they couldn't name it after the family anyway. I saw one reference to one of these markers, and I thought it was just a one-time marker at a one-time location. So, just so people don't come out here and be like, you did all this research and you didn't know about that? Yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you, but it was a misunderstanding on my part. Never too late to make an adjustment. Now I'm gonna be kind of keeping my eye on the ground, see if any more of those markers pop up. And here we are. We're like about 2 blocks south of Swain. Here's where the actual Risley Avenue crosses. Although I guess, again, these stations were named sometimes just after the people that own the land, so I guess it wouldn't necessarily have to be on Risley Avenue. Now that I think about it, I still think there's something sneaky going on. My, how soon we forget. Granted, I put this project on the back burner for several weeks. On my notes about each stop, here's what I have next to Risley. It's located at the northwest corner, crossing Swain Avenue. This is the Risley stop. Risley family, one of the most prominent families in the area. And then at the end of my notes, not on Risley Avenue. I wrote this down like a month ago. Went completely out of my head, which is funny because one of the main reasons I do note-taking like this, like I'm still in school, is because this is the best method for me to really remember and retain information. Apparently it doesn't work all the time. So here is Concord. Do we have another marker? Or is that just some... Yeah, I think we have another marker. Now, it says it was at the northwest corner, which this is south, this is west. So odds are, because yeah, approximate location of Concord Station. Cool beans. But it says specifically it was at the northwest corner, which would put it in this general area right here, probably in this grass along Arista. And as we continue on south, this is where Arista Drive kind of begins to peter out. It becomes a little circle over here. Here it just kind of eventually dead ends. And that's the end of Arista Drive. But the trolley continued. Aha. We got another one. Approximate location of Vineyard Station. There's no way they did that and didn't realize they were rhyming. There's no way. Because here's Vineyard Road crossing. And so it seems these markers, because in terms of Vineyard, I didn't get an exact location in terms of like what corner it's on. But they all seem to be just past, just north of the road that the station references. So my guess is they were pretty much mostly all to the northwest side. So it would have been like right here. But that's, in this case, is an approximation on my part because I didn't get an exact reference. Whereas Risley stop, Concord stop, they say northwest corner specifically. And onward we go, continuing south. And this is where I get a little goofy with the names. You know, a lot of names down here I learned to pronounce probably based on how my parents were saying them, and I'm pretty sure I'm saying the names wrong because the next 2 stops are named after people that lived in this area. And the street crossing here, I've always called it Nafe, but I'm pretty sure it's Neff is how it's pronounced. But this is Nafe Road crossing, and there was a stop here named after the family of said name. Now, is there a marker? I don't know how far the markers go. And then there's the Stringfield Family Park over here, which before they fixed this all up, this was a lot of just tree growth. But yeah, there's you know, playground equipment here. Like, you know, there's some benches. I came down here and sat and wrote on some projects of mine. Like, it's an okay little place to stop. Wait, did I miss a marker? Nope. Unless the marker for the station isn't quite on the road, but somehow I don't think that's the case. But anyway, yeah, this is where the, I'm gonna say Neff stop would have been located. So I have to just pause for a brief moment and give some kudos to the park and the choices they make, the maintenance they do. Right as I crossed Neff, I suddenly, all of a sudden out of nowhere, started having to go to the bathroom real bad. And there's a restroom here. It's also December. I know there's no way that this restroom is open right now. So I'm like, well, whatever, I'll give it a shot. I go to grab the door, expecting it to be locked, open right up for me. So good on you, Stringfield Family Park, for having a restroom that's actually open during the winter months. I love it. Whenever I'm out in the winter, that never happens. If I'm in need of a restroom and there's one in a park, nah, ain't gonna work. Anyway, back to the trail. The next stop, a short distance down. Another name that I have a tendency to, I think I've always said wrong because it's the way my parents said it, blame them. I've always called it Rothy, but I think it's Rothy, which actually makes sense because if you're saying the O, the E at the end would probably be silent. So it'd be like Roth, if you did it my way. Here's the crossing of Rothy, and actually where this building, pretty much the side of this building, it may have been just a little bit further that way. This is the original location of Bob's Red Mill, where his business was. The site burned down, so he moved more into Milwaukie. But yeah, right here where the trolley would have crossed Rothy Road, this over here is where Bob's Red Mill originally was located. And am I missing a... Okay, I didn't miss a marker. And for some trivia, my old high school is right up the hill there, off of Rothy Road. So if you know, you know. Is that a marker? I think we have a marker. So this is interesting. This is on the south side. Approximate location of Rothy Station. So it would have been on this side instead of that side. So I'm assuming the actual station probably would have been still on this side. I know they like to keep stations on one side or another, but then again, I think you could get off those cars on either side, so maybe it was over here. Either way, right in this general spot, Rothy Station. And as we process further south, the next stop is right ahead here at Boardman. But this stop is one of those ones, wasn't named after the street, but it actually had a different name. All right, we are neck deep in Jennings Lodge. I don't know what that means, but here's Boardman Avenue crossing over. This was at the site of the Ashdale stop, or I guess Ashdale Station. I feel like most of these were just little wood covers. So when I hear station, I'm like, okay, you know, whatever, go with the history. But I'm like, station is a bit much. I think I see a marker. And just to show you how much things have changed, before they came in, fixed this all up and paved it, this portion was gone. You can look back at old Google Map imagery and there's just Arista, and this is all just brush. We have a marker. Did they give it the right? Yes, they did. I mean, I would hope they wouldn't screw that up. Approximate location of Ashdale Station. So again, this one was actually on the south side of the street that it crossed. So Ashdale Station would have been right here.
Despite the decline of the Great Depression, the streetcar had one more fight to put up. With America joining World War II at the end of 1941, this would lead to the rationing of many resources, as well as a halt in the manufacturing of new cars. With a still very robust streetcar system in place compared to other places, the Portland area experienced a spike in ridership for the duration of the war. But this was not to last. Starting in 1946, an even steeper decline than before started, catapulted by a post-war auto boom. Into the 1950s, it was reported that ridership had shrunk to a state of less than 20% of what it was during the war. With each passing year, these car lines faced increased chances of extinction. Between Portland and Oregon City, this was further affected by the construction of Highway 99, or McLaughlin Boulevard, that took place during the 1930s. This created a major highway that only grew in importance over time, especially with more and more cars out on the road. It also established the process of moving the commercial center of Oak Grove towards the highway and away from the streetcar line. Because of this transition, when you walk the trolley trail in this area today, it's almost entirely residential, seemingly an odd place for a rail line to pass through. As the 50s continued on, one by one, these various streetcar lines around the area disappeared, ultimately dwindling down to just one.
Oh, and by the way, as makes sense, you see this road suddenly starts here where Ashdale Station was. This is another section of Arista Drive. So Arista Drive continues for a short distance till it wraps over to McLaughlin Boulevard, Old Highway 99, which is right over there, and we're kind of slowly inching toward it, which is actually worth mentioning because it's very interesting the way the car line went, because you got to remember, this car line that came through here is originally 1890s. Long before Old Highway 99 became the monstrosity that it is today. And so we're angling right into McLaughlin as we approach what would have been Jennings Station, approximately located at Jennings Avenue. And this was another place that was named after the family, the Jennings family, of course. And yeah, this would have cut diagonal across McLaughlin today. And then, as makes sense, right before we hit Jennings, here's this little baby portion of Arista that wraps around into McLaughlin, because I mean, honestly, it's got nowhere to go. So you can see the line was just kind of coming through here, and it actually starts again on that side of the road. So right here, it would have literally cut right across where this intersection is today. Ooh, road raging. But again, McLaughlin Boulevard, this massive highway, wasn't like this yet. And then this is Jennings Avenue, crossing street. Apparently at this place it's kind of like Oak Grove Station, more than just a place to catch the trolley, but also a place to go shop and eat. And They apparently had a post office at this stop. I didn't miss a thing, did I? No. Marker? I'm just looking the whole sidewalk at this block for a marker. Is it in the middle of the street? That would kind of suck. I'm actually looking in the middle of the street now. That's how desperate I am to not miss a marker now that I know they're here. Don't see any marker. They may just not have one because it's, well, I almost missed it. It's weathered. Approximate location of Jennings Lodge Station. So it would have been at the, this would be the southeast corner. So it would have been right in this general vicinity. Oh, good. I almost missed it. And then as the trolley would have just kind of cut right across here, you can see this kind of odd street. Kind of just starts out of nowhere. You can't even pass through here this way because it's blocked off. This is like a dead-end road. So, as you might have guessed, this is where the trolley would have continued along its way. Now, it's kind of tight quarters here. There is a sidewalk to one side of the street, but for a moment, the actual trolley trail itself has to end because, I mean, where would you put it? And as you can see, once this fence goes away, there's a little bit of space here. We have the start of the trail again. Now, I'm not absolutely certain if the streetcar line was actually right here or if it was actually here, because again, we've now got a trail going in accordance to a road. Back at Arista, where we had a road going along with us, it was on both sides and the trail went up the middle, and so you still knew where the trolley was. So my guess is actually that the streetcar was probably in this space in between the two, and that's because a little further up, the street I'm on, this one that starts up from near Jennings and McLaughlin, is Abernathy Lane, and that's the stretch that the car line continued along. And a little ways up here, Abernathy actually briefly splits into two, kind of like Arista, and my only assumption is that the streetcar went down the middle of it. Now, it is possible that road could have been changed or altered in the years after, but I don't think that's the case here. But actually, I'm at Hull in Abernathy, and if you venture off the trail for a moment, I know that these houses are, they're somewhat new. This is not a super old road, but this little dead-end street they're on is called Trolley Lane. And I'm guessing that has something to do with the fact that the trolley was right here. I just had to stop and take note of that for a moment. And now we're approaching the crossing street of Meldrum Avenue. There was another station located here, another one that was named after a family that owned the land in this vicinity. Do we have a marker? I think we do. Is that a marker? I think so. Here we go. Approximate location of, sorry, the rain is making it kind of hard to read, Meldrum Station. So Meldrum Station would have been located right here, and here's where you can see the road actually splits in two again, leading me to believe the trolley went right through here. So actually following the path. We have Ashton Lane over here, Abernathy over here, and there's where the Meldrum stop was located. All right, we're not that far down. In fact, I didn't miss it, did I? Meldrum's right there. But the way they describe it is that it was near Glen Echo, which is the next crossing street up here. And by the way, once I cross Glen Echo, I will officially be in Gladstone. But there was a Fern Ridge station in the vicinity of Glen Echo, but the information I found said it was north of Glen Echo, and I am currently north of it walking south. So I'm like, was the stop somewhere in here? Because literally, again, Meldrum is right there. It's like 2 stops that are like, what, a couple 100 feet apart? So I'm hoping there's a marker for this one, because this is one of those ones where the information given is not exact. I saw no marker on the north side of Glen Echo, so I'm hoping there's one on the south side, and maybe just someone got their information wrong. I see something. I don't think that's a marker. It looks too small. No, it's whatever this white thing is. I'll keep my eyes open, though. It tried to fool me. Okay, well, I mean, if there is no marker, then like Glen Echo or the Fern Ridge station was like somewhere in this vicinity, but people say just on the other side of Glen Echo. So the path gets a little rougher around the edges, but yeah, the streetcar line continued along Abernathy right here, and Abernathy wraps around the corner here and connects with Portland Avenue. Continue south on Portland Avenue, you're going into the cute little downtown area of Gladstone. And here's where the trolley trail comes out. Abernathy ends, or at least ends here. I don't know, maybe it picks up somewhere else. Other streets along this line have. And you can see the path comes out here at Portland Avenue. And trolley trail sign referencing Portland Avenue, Gladstone High School that way. Trail continues along the street, heading into downtown Gladstone. So yeah, turn here. This is the main drag through the town, and the streetcar line would have cut right down the street here, all the way to the Clackamas River before crossing into Oregon City and ultimately reaching its end.
With numbers falling, the Portland Traction Company was looking to abandon all of the city's interurban lines by 1952. But they were in for the fight of their lives, primarily with those folks living along the line headed out to Oregon City. Despite the boom of the automobile, many locals still relied heavily on the interurban line. Some pandering was done in the suggestion of better bus service in the area, but again, for people like those in Oak Grove, it wasn't just about the car line, but also about keeping their original downtown area alive and thriving best it could. Whenever the matter came up for a public meeting, the locations were crowded by protesters. While on one side, the traction company was losing money each year keeping this line open, many locals called them out for doing little to promote the lines and allowing the station shelters to fall into disrepair. The inference was that the company was doing their best to make sure that these car lines died. An organization of locals called Transit Savers came together with the focus of promoting and improving ridership on that line. The fight carried on over a few years, with every little push made to end the line being met by staunch opposition. The bus option was pushed harder, with the Rose City Transit Company trying to put more buses through the Milwaukie area to Oregon City. This, no doubt, would help dwindle streetcar ridership even more. No shocker, it was noted that some officers with Rose City Transit were also associated with the Portland Traction Company. A plan to extend the Selwood bus line into Milwaukie in early 1957 would be abandoned after further protest. These people were going to fight till the end. For the rest of the year, the fight kept going and the streetcar kept running. And then, a bombshell. If you think this whole thing ended amicably, think again. With no warning, at 8:15 p.m. on January 25th, 1958, the Portland Traction Company suddenly halted the service of this last remaining interurban line. There was little explanation aside from the claims that this was done on advice from council. With an immediate halt in service, numerous people were left stranded waiting for a streetcar that was never going to pick them up. In particular, several roller skaters were left stranded at Oaks Park. This also happened only hours after Oregon State Public Utilities Commissioner Howard Morgan had ordered the traction company to keep the line in operation. Morgan thought something was strange when he noticed the rep from the traction company's law firm loitering around the vicinity of his office that day. He also noted it as the first time in the state's history where a company stopped service in direct defiance of a state agency or judicial body. It seemed the traction company decided they would stop the hemorrhaging of money and stop things altogether, and if anybody wanted to stir up trouble, they could just drag it through the court system. And that's what they did. When Multnomah County and Morgan himself tried to pressure the reopening of the line, the traction company took it to court. The car line would never reopen, and the matter carried on until 1962, when the state Supreme Court ruled 5-2 in favor of the traction company, calling the Utility Commission's demands unconstitutional. Maybe that was so, and yeah, the traction company could not go on forever losing money by the day, but still, how they chose to end things was scummy as hell. They didn't even have the decency to run the line at least till the end of that last day. Not only was this the first interurban line on the West Coast, but it would also be the Portland area's last. On June 22, 1959, the last of the city's old streetcars did a final run as a sort of last goodbye, as the cars were mainly running so they could be stashed somewhere down the line. For the next decade after the interurban line ended, these tracks were used exclusively by freight trains before the line was officially closed down in 1968. And as early as 1971, there were already efforts in place to preserve the route the streetcar once traveled down. Money obtained through a House bill allowed for the purchase of the land that the tracks used to stand on. There were even brief talks about possibly starting another car line along this stretch. But these early purchases were so important in allowing what exists today to be here, because had someone else bought this land before them, who knows the mess it would have taken to try and obtain these lands again, if it were even possible. But still, even with the hopes of preserving the old line, mainly an effort out of the Oak Grove area, this old stretch quickly fell into neglect, being overrun by weeds and shrubs so dense that chunks of the route were inaccessible. By the time I came along as a kid growing up in the 90s, work had been done and the trail was accessible and used frequently by locals, even if it was a tad bit treacherous in places. Look what I almost missed. Portland Traction Company. Ooh, that was 1881. He said railway was incorporated with a line from Columbia River to Eugene. It didn't happen. Didn't know that. Line to reach South Gladstone, Oregon City. Home describes the interurban trolley lines. Road was designed as ended in 19. East Dartmouth Street is wider than West Dartmouth Street because the trolley went up to Shriners Park across Oakfield. That's an advantage. It would then come back down to Portland Avenue. Cool, so it actually veered off briefly. And Happy's Restaurant, which I used to go to all the time. It's literally like right over there.
And you've got them approaching the bridge. You got Gladstone 1916. And you can see that trolley line coming right down the middle. And you got a picture, it's a little pixely, but you got a picture of a trolley. That's so cool that that's here, that they're embracing that history. I almost walked right by that. That's so interesting because I used to walk around here a lot when I lived down in this area. And I always kind of wondered why Dartmouth was so wide, like between here and going up towards 82nd Drive. I didn't come here looking for the answer, but I found one. And we're coming to the end of the line, no pun intended. After crossing Arlington, the streetcar would have just kept going this way. And then there's one more street. It's like Clackamas Boulevard, I think. Yes, Clackamas Boulevard. I knew it was Clackamas something. And the streetcar went right through here and crossed the bridge. Right up here. But that bridge is no longer here. It was old. It was dangerous. Yep, here's where it would have gone through. This is Clackamas County Monument. I don't know. I thought maybe that was in relation to the bridge, but yeah, it's the bridge. Went right through here. Or the bridge didn't go through here. The trolley trail went right through here. And crossed right through there. And yeah, I mean, if you turn around, here's Portland Avenue, the main drag, it would have come right down. So, I mean, if it was going in a straight line down the middle, this would be right about where the tracks were. So the bridge would have been, well, there's a tree right there, so I don't know, maybe if you're there, I'm not dead certain, but you can see that this is the, yeah, right where it cut down through downtown and veered off briefly before coming back, which I just found out. That was pretty cool to find.
The original bridge crossing the Clackamas River here was built, understandably, in 1892 in preparation for the new Interurban line. But it was quickly determined that this bridge was not built to handle the traffic that needed to go over it, and it was replaced in 1908 with a new 260-foot long steel bridge. I remember this bridge from my younger days, fenced off and slowly being obscured by nature. People still snuck out on the shaky old bridge from time to time as a quick way to cross the river. Come 2014, the bridge had shifted and was tilting and in danger of collapse, leading to it being pulled into the river in March of that month.
All right, after walking all over the place, this is what I was hoping to find, was a trail from the Oregon City side that leads down along the river so that I could get a view across the river and see if I can find any old remains of the trolley trail bridge. There's a path that actually goes to the water right here. Because here's the building dead ahead, and you look over past these. Look at this, it just kind of goes into the ground, doesn't it? Yeah, there we go. Look at that. This is what I was hoping to find. Old bottom. You can see that the big pole there's knocked to the side. That's probably because they knocked the bridge this way and it just kind of fell in the water right here. Yeah, that's so cool. That's what I was hoping to find. So now I'm walking, trying not to kill myself, to see if I can find any remains of that on this side of the water. I'm gonna try going up there to see if I can find something too, but I'm hoping I can find something right down here as well. This is about as close as I'm gonna get. You can see I'm pretty much in line. Like the trestle, any trestle remains would have been right here. And you can see it's very rocky up through here. And then you kind of see it level off up there. So it looks like the trestle was more up there and not so much down here like on that side. But yeah, this is up these rocks is where it would have gone. So doing environmental stuff here, which that's pretty cool. And if you look through here, you can see the trestle. So yeah, it would have gone through, kind of, see where this kind of wraps around? More towards that end is probably where it would have come through all the way. So right kind of through here is probably where the train would have come through.
As of now, there are plans in place to build a new bridge here to provide a place for pedestrians to cross the river. One design possibility is done in the style of the old bridge itself, which, call me a boring son of a bitch, but if this project happens, I really hope they choose that option. And then the last stretch of the line, a portion I haven't discussed much, the end of the line in Oregon City. And for a ways, we have to rely a bit on old maps to guide us from the Clackamas River down to where the streetcar ran, right down the middle of Main Street. Maps indicate the line hooked to the southwest after crossing the bridge, and there's actually a space that wraps into a path along the river that lines up fairly close to where the line would have turned. It would then ultimately come up behind where the Oregon City Shopping Center is today, along Main Street and into the downtown area. Before the line extended to the Accompanying area, it appears this car line stopped around where the old Blue Heron Mill space is today. However, some rail lines went into this mill area itself, some of which I caught footage of while exploring the old mill back in 2017.
Now, one more thing before hitting the old dusty trail. You'll note some of the video we took, there was railway tracks through there. That is this railway line that goes through the fence, and that's the mill just back there in the dark. Now, this is the end of the old trolley line, like the Oak Grove trolley trail and stuff. It crossed into Oregon City, and it came through, and it ended here. So, more history.
So, like, Liz, you guys can say what you want about, like, oh, shit, I'm an amateur historian. I could be, you know, make up whatever name you want. But Steve continually surprised me with, like, oh, I had no idea that this thing.
Maps indicate that the streetcar line just seemed to turn and wrap right around the mill site, much like Old Highway 99 does today. There are still railroad lines running between the highway and the mill, some looking long since abandoned. Using satellite imagery, we can follow a distinguishable railroad line that is still in use today, and a line next to it that's not looking like it's in the greatest shape. But between that and the river, there is an area that is noticeably flat and may have possibly been the way the streetcar line went to reach Clackamas, as once we reach that point, this area vanishes completely and we're just back to the two still existing lines of track next to it. So this may very well be where it all ended, at least for a southbound traveling commuter.
Now, on the Oregon City side of things, so the bridge would have crossed in close proximity to that structure on the river right there, and it wrapped pretty close to along this body of water, which I think this is like a little lake that branches off the river over there, and it wrapped down this way, and there's a trail here runs along the water, comes out here, and this probably ran also pretty close to in line with where the car line came through here, because I know it came out somewhere in this area, and there's a traffic circle over here. I think it kind of came through there because it came through kind of along the backside of where the Oregon City Shopping Center is, and that's on the other side of these, which weren't here a few years ago. And again, I haven't really been here super recently. So yeah, the streetcar would have come roughly through here, because this is Main Street, and Main Street wraps around here, goes under the freeway, which I'm about to go under, And once it goes under the freeway, it starts venturing into the downtown Oregon City area, which is where the line originally ended. And then just a little ways up the road around the corner, here's where Main Street goes under the freeway. So probably not necessarily the exact route that the streetcar would have gone through. Again, streetcar went through here decades before 205 did. So there probably wouldn't have been a whole lot in this area along this particular stretch of the line. But I don't know, we're calling back certain instances over 100 years ago. So I don't know, maybe this place was bumping once upon a time, but now on the other side of the freeway, Main Street, yeah, just kind of wraps around and then ventures into downtown. That's a shame. That was probably an okay structure once upon a time. I don't know what it was used for. Seeing car lots ahead, more buildings popping up. We are venturing into civilization. And it can be a fun little walk down here, down Main Street, at least to the end. You can go up the elevator, whatnot. It's a good place to spend, an afternoon if you got some free time on your hands. And one thing I really like as I'm coming to the end, the last few blocks, is that while the streetcar line, ran through right here, it ran just one block over from the elevated train line right over there. That trains of another sort went down, so they were just kind of running parallel through here. It's just a few more blocks right up around the corner, and then eventually Main Street ends as McLaughlin wraps around and you're at the site of the former Blue Heron paper mill that they've been trying to get that property switched over forever. That's another story altogether. I actually did a video about the history of that area, but anyway, I'm not going to make it all the way to the end because I've walked many miles, my feet are killing me. Most importantly is I cut this as close as I could. I got to catch a bus within the next 15 to 20 minutes, so I got to go to the transit center right around the corner. So this is where I take my leave of you all in this long, many mile long walk that I put out over 2 days, because ain't no way I was getting from OMSI down to here. So yeah, that's why I have my backpack with me, because I have my work clothes with me. I wasn't going to wear my work clothes doing all this walking around, but yeah, this took 2 days, many hours. All said and done, I don't really know. Well, I mean, they say the line was about 16 miles, and I feel like I've walked something in the realm of 14, 15 miles. Of course, I didn't cover the start of the line in downtown. I mostly wanted to cover, well, at least focus what I was doing with the parts of the old line where the path is still there, and follow the path.
In the 90s, the main portion of the Springwater Corridor Trail was completed, followed by the Springwater on the Willamette portion, done in 2005, and the last of the corridor completed in 2006. With these two portions running in close proximity to each other, it certainly made sense to connect them in some way, and the trolley trail that exists today between Milwaukie and Gladstone is just an extension of the route the car line followed in relation to Springwater on the Willamette. The trolley trail, while usable, was still in pretty rough shape going into the 2000s, with North Clackamas Parks and Metro purchasing its right-of-way in 2001. The plan was to have this old stretch converted to the paved multi-use path it is today by 2004. But there were delays. Work would not ultimately take off until 2010, with completion done the following year. Despite living so close to the line, I personally don't remember the construction phase. It's just one day I went down to the path and it was all cleaned up and paved. Of course, I miss the old rough around the edges look of the former trail, but what we have today is cleaner, more appealing to most, and most importantly, safer. And it is a looking glass into history for future generations, anyone who's interested, to know where the cars of a bygone transportation system once passed through.